Good morning. As you are watching this, if you are watching it on Sunday, it is December 26th. If you are watching it later this week, just to see what it was that I was doing online, that's great. Also, we're glad that you are watching today. I wanted to just share some answers to some questions this morning. Obviously, Emily and Jack and I are not here. We are down celebrating Christmas with her family, and then actually right at probably about this point in the morning, we are on our way back up to Kansas City to go see some of my family. We do wish you a very wonderful and a very Merry Christmas as you have celebrated yesterday and are probably still celebrating through today and maybe even into this next week as kids are still at home from school and all that. What I wanted to do today was just take some time, kind of intersperse through our service with some carols, just answer some questions about Christmas. And there is kind of a big overarching thought to all of this, but I just wanted to take some time and be able to do that and to lift this up and just kind of be real relaxed about today. And I would have done this if we'd been here in person, but something I can do by video. I also do want to say a very special thank you to Shelley for leading worship today. I'm sure she is doing a great job. I don't know that for sure. I'm just assuming because she always does a great job because I'm not here with you today to know for a fact that's what's going on, but I know she is. And now that I have managed to wrangle myself maybe into some trouble, let's get to some questions. The first one that I want to look at today is Jesus' birthday really December 25th? And more importantly, does the date even matter? Now, the quick answer is no, it's not really December 25th. We've had a long history in the church of trying to figure out what that date might be through lots of different ways. We have no historical records. We've got no anything else that really tells us anything outside of the Gospels. We don't have that would otherwise tell us what that date might actually be. And even all of the attempts that we have in Scripture that try to date, show us the date of when all of these events were taking place, don't really work out all that well because there were always at least a couple of different calendars that folks were using, and not all historical records agree with one another. And so, honestly, about the closest thing we have to really helping us know when Jesus was born is in when Luke's gospel, and he says, "And the shepherds were watching their flock by night." Now, the interesting part about this is that there were 3 seasons of the year when shepherds would be out doing that. Any guesses on to when the fourth one that wasn't when they would be doing that? Winter. So December 25th, very definitely, according to Luke, is not one of those times. Now, there are traditions that will try and date Jesus' birth back to, I've got to look at my list here because there's several, March 25th or 28th, April 19th or 20th, May 20th or November 18th. And there's a long history behind each of those as to why those might have been dates that would have been possible for Jesus' birth. Now, the kind of the crazy part was that for a long time, Epiphany, January 6th, was treated as was the celebration of Jesus' birth. We in the church today, we treat Epiphany as the coming of the wise men, and it's like the official end of the Christmas season at that point. But back then, this goes back to about 150, the year 150, when Epiphany really got it started. Its origins are still kind of murky, but like so much of what comes to the Christmas holiday, it's assumed that what was actually going on then was some other sort of holiday or festival or feast or something else in the area where it started that the church said, it doesn't really work for us that well, but we also want to kind of keep some of that tradition alive, and so we're going to find a way of trying to incorporate that holiday, that feast, that festival, whatever it is, into the tradition of the church. And so that's kind of where Epiphany began, and it's really also a lot about where we get Christmas dated from was doing a lot of the same thing. Now, to the bigger question, though, does that matter? And honestly, does it matter what the date is? No. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter at all. In fact, the most important thing that we can do with the date of Christmas is respect it and treat it as holy, because it is a holy feast. It's a holy festival. I'd say holy day, a holiday for us in the church. But because we don't, the thing that we can do that'll have the most impact, and this is going to be a theme you're going to see come out through this, is that we have to kind of let go of our rigid understanding of this is Christmas, this is the day, this is, right? And just let the story speak. And let the holiday work for itself. And if folks want to do something different, great, go do something different. But treat this, for us as people of faith, as something special, something important, and most importantly, to remember the story that we have to tell. Now, let's go to our second question for today, and then we're going to go to a song. And our second question for today is, let me get it here. Got to find it again. This one's a fun one. Why is everything around the Christmas holiday, why does it seem to come from Victorian England, Scandinavia, Northern Europe, from the Dutch, or from the early to mid 1900s United States? And have you ever stopped to think about that? That so many of the Christmas traditions that we have out there kind of come from those areas and those places. Now, this is, for a very long time, Christmas was not celebrated. We have to remember kind of where some of the origins are of Christmas, that they come from old, the December time period comes from the winter solstice, the longest night, which traditionally throughout human history has always been a cause for worry and concern, especially before you had electric lights. I mean, that was a long time to be without light. And so folks would put together all sorts of things to have and to do on that longest night, on that winter solstice. And a lot of holidays and festivals would come from that. That is, the dating of Christmas comes from the Roman festival of Saturnalia, and there's some more tradition kind of behind it, kind of the basic place where that comes from. But we've lost a lot of the tradition for that other than the dating. But some of our other traditions come from places like Scandinavia and Northern Europe, and we have traditions like the Yule log, which was a great big log that was used, and there's a lot of other stuff that comes from that, was used to burn through that longest night. But really, the Northern European part of this comes from St. Nicholas of Myra. Who was a priest, I believe also a bishop. I'd have to go back and look at my notes right now. My memory is escaping me on that. But where the tradition of St. Nicholas comes from, and he would give gifts and he would reach out and help people in need at this time of year. And so that's where the tradition of St. Nicholas comes from. In Dutch, we have the tradition of Sinterklaas, which comes also from this time of year. More fascinating is the carols and the songs we sing and some of this other stuff, and even Charles Dickens' great classic, A Christmas Carol, all come from England, and that kind of in the Victorian time era. And in fact, Dickens got his start for A Christmas Carol actually from Washington Irving, believe it or not, and who had some thoughts on Christmas that were very popular in the U.S. in the early 1800s. Carroll then went on to write his book, A Christmas Carol, which would go on to great acclaim. And the odd part there's a couple of odd parts about the Christmas Carol. One is that he writes it as if there were long-standing Christmas traditions in England at the time. There weren't really, but he basically created them from the stories that he told. The other part is that there is no mention of Jesus anywhere in that story. Just some fun things to think about. Then we pop into the U.S., and the biggest revival we see is that Norman Rockwell, who was also inspired a lot by Dickens as well, began to kind of really do a lot more with Christmas. And then Santa Claus, or then the iconic red-suited Santa comes from the Coca-Cola Company. And the 1900s is a marketing gimmick and an advertising thing. So those are all kind of the pieces of where a lot of our traditions come from. Now, there's a whole lot more to those stories, but that's some of the part where they come from. And these things are all going to tie together. But for now, I invite you to, and for the life of me, I can't remember what the next song is. So you're going to sing another song, and then we'll come back here after a bit to some more questions.